Good evening, Mayor Allen. It is 6:31 and you do have a quorum on camera, so you may begin whenever you're ready.
Nice to see you, Deputy Clerk Marshall. Briefly, before you turned off. Can I have a mover and seconder to call this meeting to order? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral, at the special meeting of the Council of Township of Springwater of September 27, 2021 come to order at 6:31 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Due to COVID, Council's taking the steps to limit in-person meetings. So we're meeting through Zoom electronically with the council and staff. Residents are provided with the following options to watch or listen to the council meeting. You can watch it live on the township website at www.springwater.ca. You can listen to it by dialing on your phone 647-558-0588 and using the code 812-4065-6503 and the pound sign. This is available during the meeting, and for those who are unable to watch the live stream, you can review the meeting at your convenience by watching the video on the township's YouTube channel. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder to call the public meeting to order? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma Chapman, that the public meeting of council held under section 42 of the Drainage Act for the Swaley Drain final report be called to order at 6:33 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. 1 second, please. Welcome to this public meeting of Springwater Township Council held in compliance with Section 42 of the Drainage Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to the Swaley Drain final report. First part of this meeting is to present the final report. Following that, the public will be given an opportunity to make an oral submission through Zoom applications. Any person wishing to make an oral submission must have notified the township prior to 12 p.m. this morning and must have been added to the commenters list. All comments and questions should be addressed to the chair, myself. Oral submissions will be included in this meeting's minutes and form part of the public record, including the name and address of the speaker, as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the township's website. I will now call upon the clerk. We're talking about the Swaley Drain final report. I'll now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates upon which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 14th day of September 2021 to affected landowners and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Drainage Act and its regulations.
Has the clerk's department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from Kim and David Dobson of 1926 Vespra Valley Road in an email dated September 27th, 2021, and that correspondence can be found attached to tonight's agenda.
Thank you, clerk. I'll now call upon Ken Smart of K Smart and Associates to present the final report, please.
Hello to everyone. I'm Ken Smart, the engineer involved with the Swaley Drain. Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and those who are online today, this meeting is to be deemed the consideration of the final report on the Swaley Drain as submitted pursuant to the Ontario Drainage Act. The Drainage Act's procedure for this consideration is that the engineer give a brief presentation of his report and that he answers any questions or goes into more detail if requested. But any presentations are then heard and that council then determines if the report should be adopted as a provisional bylaw, be referred back to the engineer for further study, or be terminated. I will discuss these options later in my presentation. My presentation today will be approximately 10 minutes. I have asked the township to display drawing 1 from my report, which is on the screen before you now. It highlights the work recommended by my report. The area outlined in a red oblong is indeed the area of the work recommended. This drawing also shows the full extent of the existing Swaley drain in the heavy solid mines, and it shows the watershed showing short bold dashes that we believe applies. Also included is what is shown are the Nottawasaga River on the left part of the screen, the route of the original Muskrat Creek, which is that green line, and the route of the original Swaley drain, which is inundated, which is also in a green line. And also various larger properties are shown in the watershed. Other drawings from my report can be displayed if there appears to be a need to do so. My presentation will be primarily a reading of the executive summary section as contained in my final report. This final report is pursuant to Section 78 of the Drainage Act related to providing an improved outlet for the Swaley drain as it now exists. This report follows the submission of a preliminary report dated July 21st, 2021, that was considered by council on August the 4th, 2021. Any of you who have had a chance to read the preliminary report and/or who have had a chance to participate in the consideration of the preliminary report will recall that the preliminary report recommended that A, the Swaley drains outlet as now existing in the flooded waters of the Minising wetlands be extended in concession 11, either 750 meters on one route or 950 meters on another route downstream and further into the wetlands, where wetland levels are 470 millimeters, brackets 19 inches lower, and that the work be done by barge methods. B, that the minimum swath to be cut through the wetland vegetation be 6 meters, although the preliminary report also discussed an option of using a 10 meters swath width. C, in either swath width, a channel of 500 millimeters depth be excavated at the floor of the wetland waters in the swath, and with a greater depth where work commenced so that a barge with its 900 millimeters draft, 36-inch draft, is able to be used. D, that a monitoring program of the work be set up. E, that the Swaley drain channel in concessions 9 and 10 be repaired in the near future by the drainage superintendent as a separate project. And F, that environmental enhancements as agreed to be constructed as part of the work. The preliminary report recommendations were issued also on the understanding that the Downey drain channel in concession 12 and 13 would be brushed by the drainage superintendent as a separate project before or during the work of this project. That is in the upper left-hand part of the display. The final report has been now prepared such that it will implement all of the recommendations of the preliminary report as I just described. With respect to the optional route and swell widths that the preliminary report considered, this final report recommends that the 750 meter route be followed, which is that red oblong area, and that the swath width be 9 meters. By the way, this 9 meter swath width will accommodate a 30-foot wide barge. It will actually brush the vegetation, touch the vegetation as it moves. It only needs 30 feet, but it's a tight 30 feet. The cost estimate of the project in the preliminary report was $350,000, and this cost is now $357,700 in this final report. This cost is to be distributed, assessed such that approximately $127,000 is assessed to be paid by the roads of the township of Springwater. $35,000 is assessed to the 2 provincial agencies involved with wetland ownership in concessions 11 and 12. $27,000 is assessed to the roads of the county of Simcoe. $3,500 is assessed to Highway 26, and the remaining $165,000 plus or minus is assessed to the adjusted 1,298 hectares of lands, excluding roads, in the watershed. The expected approximate assessment per each hectare of land is $127, which is $51 per acre. Properties which are considered to be residents will have 1/2 of their assessment paid by the township. As well, those residents who are owners of agricultural properties that have the farm tax rate will be also eligible for a 1/3 grant, provincial grant on the share not paid by the township. Residents' net costs could therefore be $25 per acre plus or minus if not an eligible farm, or $17 per acre plus or minus if an eligible farm. This also means that the total to be paid by the township will be over $200,000. A Schedule C, which is a separate attachment to my report, shows the estimated net billing to each property and road if the project's actual final cost is the same as the estimated cost, and after eligible deductions as listed are made. There will be 5 years of monitoring work to be undertaken, and there will be separate billings for such in each year. Estimated monitoring costs are $6,200 per year and will be billed to the affected lands and roads using the same proportioning of the $357,700 initial cost. There will, however, be no municipal contributions, but there will be the provincial grant eligibility. The extent of monitoring could vary with final NVCA input, but every effort will be made to not increase the total cost of monitoring. This final report contains, amongst other sections regarding future maintenance provisions, the engineer's report on no adverse flooding as requested by NVCA, agency approvals, what ifs, grants, and proceedings. Drawings are also included in the report to show and describe the work proposed. Specifications are also included to direct the contractor in performance of the work. Sole sourcing of a contractor is recommended to expedite the tendering period in hopes of winter 2021-2022 construction. The work has to be done in a winter period. To meet the 2021/2022 construction period and to avoid having to delay for a full year, appeals, if any, and final agency approvals will have to be addressed/resolved expeditiously, if any. After hearing all input and after reviewing the report, as I earlier said, the municipality is today responsible for either adopting the report as a provisional bylaw by giving it 2 readings, or referring the report back to the engineer for more study, or for stopping proceedings on the report. If the report is adopted as a provisional bylaw, a procedure as outlined in the Drainage Act is followed to create and conduct a court of revision to hear any appeals on assessments. The Drainage Act also has procedures for appealing other matters to specific bodies. If there are appeals, all appeals have to be addressed before a 3rd reading is given to the provisional bylaw. After the 3rd reading, if given, the Act also requires that a further 10-day period pass before construction can start, should any other legal proceedings be initiated. Also, before construction starts, all final agency approvals have to be addressed. Today, for this consideration, all landowners in the watershed have been notified and have been advised as to how the final report can be reviewed and how any concerns can be presented to council. Any landowner could speak to the area of their property shown in the watershed, could speak, read their thoughts, read their recommendations, or read any other issues. Any input would be considered prior to council's decision, read the next step in the process. So this concludes my presentation. Normally, council asks questions first, then any landowners in the downstream area could present their concerns, and then any others could provide input. Council may have received written comments, questions, and these can be addressed after any present online do address council. Therefore, I will now entertain any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. I know you've worked very, very hard over the years on this, and you've worked very hard since the last time we met with the MVCA and to finalize this report. So we're very happy that you've done it, and we know the time constraints and the necessity to get through all this process so that we can do the work, hopefully, in November, December of this year. I'll now call upon the clerk to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions and make comments in this matter.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There are no commenters who have registered to make an oral submission. However, there are 7 residents who are attending the meeting at this time. So if you are attending the meeting and would like to speak, please use the raise hand function, which you'll find at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And then I will call upon you for an opportunity to provide comments. If you are calling into the meeting, you're unable to raise your hand, but I will call upon you with the last 4 digits of your telephone number. So I will just go through the attendees one by one. We have a caller with the last 4 digits of the number 5672. I've allowed you to speak. If you can unmute yourself using *6 and let council know if you would like to make any comments or questions regarding this application, please.
Thank you. My name's Paul Meredith, 11 Pinehurst Lane. No, I don't have any comments at this time.
Thank you. I don't see any hands up, but I will go through the rest of the list since it is small, in case somebody was having issues with that. Jay Berry, you are unmuted. Do you have any questions or comments regarding the application?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Kim Dobson, you are unmuted. Do you have any additional comments or questions?
If I may, Clerk Ainsworth, Kim and David Dobsons were the ones who wrote in the question. And what I was going to do is, after you go through the process you're doing, I was going to get you to summarize the points they brought up and maybe have Mr. Smart, Mr. Buchanan address those questions in that letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Larry Kamak, you are unmuted. Please unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question or comment.
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia, you are unmuted. Do you have any questions or comments regarding this application?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. And Sarah Carice, I have allowed you to speak. Do you have any questions or comments regarding the application?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. And last one, I believe Larry Kamak, I have allowed you to speak. Do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Allen. I will pull up the question or the comments submitted by the Dobsons. Just one moment.
Before you do that, I see Deputy Mayor Coughlin's comments. We will get to council after. Is it a procedure question? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It was just that Larry Kamak was asked twice and Merlin Kamak was not addressed.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you for catching that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Merlin Kamak, you are now unmuted. Do you have any questions or comments regarding this application?
Hi. Can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Just my comments I made once before. I'm very disappointed that the outlet's not been cleaned out in the Ottawa saga. I'm sorry to say the MVCA has so much power and control over drainage. I think it's been an exercise in futility. Thank you.
Mr. Smart, any response or comments with respect to that?
Yes, as I have said previously, we certainly did attempt to do work at the very lower end at the river. Unfortunately, our environmental consultant identified a number of issues that could be an issue if we were to pursue that work. At the time when we first considered the work at the lower end, we felt it was indeed necessary. But then, as I have said recent times, that we also went further downstream in the wetlands, and we found that we could obtain the depth required, in our opinion, without having to do the work at the river. So considering the environmental impacts and the possibilities of substantial costs and delays in trying to pursue the work at the lower end, it was our opinion, and still is, that the work that is now recommended is the work that should be proceeded with. We aren't even sure if the work at the lower end were undertaken, if it would translate into a similar lowering up at the Swaley Drain. And the lowering at the river would only be in the magnitude of 6 to 12 inches. And if indeed carried upstream, it would not be significant. And we feel what we have recommended is the best solution that's available at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. So Clerk Ainsworth, can you summarize what Kim and David Dobson wrote in, and maybe have Mr. Smart and Technician Buchanan consider commenting on that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. I will read the email as it came in. There's a lot to this. I don't want to miss any points that the residents would like to make. So they advise, we were fortunate enough to have the frontage of our property ditched a couple of years ago due to extreme flooding caused by the road being slowly raised over the course of several years. One of our concerns is that when the ditching was done on the west side, it was not completed from the first or even second house off of Highway 26, continuing past Hindle Lane. Instead, the ditching was done around the corner back to our property again, preventing proper drainage away from the property to the Swaley. Why was the ditch not continued under Hindle Lane via a culvert to continue to the Swaley? There is no way for the water on the north or west of Hindle Lane to reach the Swaley. Why was the east side of the road not done as well? Although I know people don't want to lose the trees. Another concern involves the farmers and their drainage tiles. They are ones that are using the Swaley Drain the most from their fields. I would hope that they're also paying their fair share. They advise that they have no issue in helping with the maintenance, but that they have no benefit. It's hard to accept paying a high rate per acre when the water never leaves their property. The township has not provided the means for the water to escape the north or west side of Hindle Lane towards the Swaley.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Mr. Smart, I'll start with you. Any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, with respect to the ditching, that is basically municipal ditching. It is not part of the drainage system. I would recommend that it be reviewed by your roads department, perhaps with the assistance of the drainage superintendent, but it is not part of the municipal drain system. And the second part of the comments were that the downstream owners should be assessed their fair share. And yes, indeed they are. Everyone is assessed the same rate per acre throughout the watershed.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. So, Mr. and Mrs. Dobson, if you're listening, I would suggest you follow up with Technician Buchanan, and you have the ability to communicate with council through a delegation, or of course through communication with Technician Buchanan, and we can explore this further. So thank you for your input and question. Okay, moving to members of council. Do we have questions, comments from members of council with respect to this? Councillor Hannah?
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I should point out, you probably didn't see the clerk had her hand up before I asked my question.
Thank you. I didn't see that. Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There is one additional attendee that has joined the meeting since I went through the list.
Okay.
The resident calling with the last four numbers 2474. I am providing you with permission to speak. If you would like to make a comment or question regarding this application, this would be your time. So you can unmute yourself using *6. Okay, thank you, Mayor Allen. You may continue.
Thank you, Clerk. Councillor Hannah, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Smart. I'm sorry, I almost called you Mr. Swilly. Mr. Smart, excellent report, lots of good information. Just the one question I had, and it's probably in Schedule C or one of the other appendices, but in page 2, it states that $127,000 is the estimated cost to Springwater taxpayers. But in addition to that, there's residential compensation for people who aren't in agricultural and other way I read it, other incidents where the township taxpayers are going to have to spend some money. So my question is, what is the total estimate for the Swilly Drain improvements to the Springwater taxpayers?
If you add all the components up, the assessments to the roads, plus the contribution that council has agreed to make towards the residents' assessments, it's slightly over $200,000. I can't remember the exact number, perhaps 203,000. It's in that magnitude.
Thank you.
Okay, Council? I have a question, Mr. Smart. The plan of enhancement, 20,000 estimate, what is involved and what is the holdup? What's the timing of getting that accepted such that we will not run into time restrictions to accomplish our sought after goal?
Well, first of all, with respect to what the money is intended to be used for, initially the comments were from NVCA to our sub-consultant Al Shaw of Riverstone Environmental Solutions were that some habitat enhancement may be what they are looking for. There has also been comments that perhaps the monies could be applied towards either acquisition of additional lands that could be part of the wetlands, or perhaps improvements from a wetland perspective to those lands. My sub-consultant, Mr. Shaw, has been endeavoring to speak further to NVCA. He has contacted them on a number of occasions since our preliminary report consideration. And really, there has been little fine tuning of the enhancements. I believe NVCA are aware of what is required. I am also aware that NVCA have had staff turnovers recently, and that may be compounding the problem. But Mr. Shaw is continuing to speak to them. Today, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we did receive written notification from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans that they have no objections to the project. And Al is going to ensure that that information is passed on to NVCA to try to further expedite input as far as enhancements. We're also waiting for NVCA to finally accept the monitoring program that has been set out by my report. There have been suggestions that perhaps some stations should be monitored more frequently and perhaps for a longer period, and then less monitoring at other locations. But again, we are waiting for NVCA to give us their final input. And we are sure they are aware that there is an obligation to have their final input prior to the onset of winter, and even prior to that when we apply for the permits. So I think everybody is acting in good faith, and we are continuing to pursue it with them, but we just haven't been able to get further input from their staff at this time.
Well, that leads to my other question, and that's the degree of cooperation you've received from MVCA since that board meeting and presentation, which you well know was a challenge and an accomplishment to get. So if you need me to try to expedite things, I'd be glad to be in contact with Doug Hevner to do that, because I don't want anybody dragging their heels on any aspect of this leading to the November, December construction goal.
Thank you for the offer. I would suggest that if we aren't able to have a good, meaningful dialogue within the next 2 weeks, we should consider your offer to do that, because 2 months will go by awfully fast, and we don't want to be trying to deadline items right at the last minute.
Okay, please follow up with me on that then.
Thank you.
Other questions, Council? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Ken Smart. This has been a long time in the making, so I support moving forward with this. I just ask, and thank you for all your hard work, Ken. I ask that we, as council, be kept in the loop as to when you start, and even as you're going through the process, even a quick report as to how you're making out. I would appreciate that very much, so that we're all kept in the loop. Thank you.
Yeah,
I will
for sure.
certainly do. I will do that. I will pass my comments through Mahesh or Steve, perhaps Jeff, but yes, we will attempt to keep you abreast, maybe on a weekly basis, as to how things are going, because, you know, time is running short.
Thank you.
We thought you'd want to be on the barge, Councillor Ritchie, as it was going down the river.
I can go with and go fishing.
Yep, there you go. I'm not sure in November, December how much you'd catch, but that would be an interesting spectacle. Other questions, Council? Okay, so thank you to all who participated in the public meeting with respect to the Swaley Drain final report, and for showing an interest in this matter that has been very near and dear to our hearts. Can I have a mover and seconder to adjourn this public meeting? Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Cabral, that this public meeting held under section 42 of the Drainage Act for the Swaley Drain final report does now adjourn at 7:03 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Let me switch here. Adjournment. Okay, we need a mover and seconder, which I probably should have gotten before, to get this on the floor. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma Chapman. So I presume we're going for option one, Council, so I can read it out. That the report from the General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations, titled Swaley Drain Concession 11 2021 Final Report, dated September 27, 2021, be received, and that Council provide direction with respect to the options outlined in this report, selecting option one, that the provisional bylaw to approve the final report and authorize the works on the Swaley Drain be presented for consideration at the September 27, 2021 special meeting of council, and that council direct staff to A, proceed with the construction works as recommended in the Swaley Drain Concession 11 final report. B, apply for all necessary permits and approvals. C, waive the typical procurement process and engage a contractor as Ken Smart and Associates have recommended on a sole source basis to complete the works. D, return to council after the works to amend the bylaw to reflect the final project costs and assess the benefiting landowners for costs as recommended by the engineering assessment schedule within the Swaley Drain Concession 11 final report. E, proceed with the annual monitoring program as recommended in the Swaley Drain Concession 11 final report. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I have a mover, and thank you again, Ken, and we look forward to your follow-up as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken.
Good night.
Bylaws, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Cabral, that the bylaw listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk, 2021-91, provisionally adopted final report, Swaley Drain. All those in favor? Confirmatory bylaw, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Ma, Councillor Ritchie. that the bylaw 2021-90 to confirm and adopt proceedings of council at the special meeting held on September 27, 2021, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? An adjournment bylaw, please. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Maude Chapman, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:06 p.m. to meet again in a regular meeting on October 6, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Good. Thank you. Good milestone accomplished. Thank you, council.
We're
Good night.
done?
Yep, we're done.